Happy Friday, hockey heads, and welcome back to your source for off-season fantasy hockey news, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And on today's episode, we're taking a look at one of the angles that can take you over the top for your upcoming drafts. Late round studs to target. Who are you looking at? Breaking it all down on Friday's episode. Let's tap in.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back inside the lab, everyone, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am privileged, as always, to be joined by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden, and on this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Steele, we come into these episodes, usually, I'm always fired up. You're the one who's holding me down. We're all over the map today with the topics, but I think we got a good one going on here because last year we did this episode and we got a lot of feedback, a lot of traction on it. Late round fantasy studs to target. And we're talking about guys that can still be really effective that you can take in the late round. And I think what I just wanted to get off the chest first before flipping it over to you like I always do is we can get caught up as fantasy GMs drafting a name that might be fading in value, but he still brings that talent level that you think he used to. The name gets in your head and you forget that there's some other maybe younger, more under the radar names that can fill out your squad. So I think that's how I'm really looking at it today. So I'll turn it over to you though. Late round fantasy assets. Who are you looking at? We got some good names on this board today.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to one of my boys over there on the New York Rangers. I'm starting off with Filip Chytil, one of the young guns there alongside Kaapo Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere. I think he's going to get some great opportunity, especially if Kaapo Kakko doesn't produce on the top wing with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. And if Alexis Lafreniere doesn't produce, we could see a shuffle of the limes and Filip Chytil being one of those guys moving up in the lineup. I thought he had a great year last year. He's only 24 years old still, so he's still fairly young, but 22 goals, 23 assists for 45 points, a plus 15, 30 penalty minutes. The peripherals are okay with the blocks and hits, only 38 and 36 between those two categories, but 177 shots. So now that he's, again, developing his game, he's not afraid to shoot that puck and put it on net because he knows he can score and facilitate with his teammates. So I really like drafting this player, and a lot of GMs out there are going to forget about him. They're probably going to go to Kaapo Kakko first. They're going to go to Alexis Lafreniere first. I actually did a draft last night, and I got him in the 17th round, my second last pick of the draft. I think it's an absolute steal for me, and I really just like this kid's game. I think he's aware of the situations and the players that he's playing with, especially with those young guys that I've mentioned so far, but he's not afraid of the big moment if he has to go up in the top 6 forward group. So for me, I'm a huge fan of the Rangers. I'm a huge fan of Filip Chytil as a fantasy hockey player, and I think he's going to continue to bring his A game every single year moving forward. I could see potentially 55 points out of the young man.
I like this take, Steele, and I think what's going on in New York is what I buy into the most. This is going to be another successful team built well back to front. Filip Chytil has also proven, Steele, to me anyway, that he is ready to seize opportunities put ahead of him. He can slot up and down that lineup, and I'm never going to bank on an injury or a player not playing well. But if that does happen, Filip Chytil is going to be right there at the top of the list to shift up and down that lineup, something that we know he can do, and with talent. And you mentioned the development side. The more he gets confident, the more the points are going to go up because he does have what it takes to get it done at the NHL level. And what I've done today with my list is actually look at a bunch of different positions to try and spread this out a little bit for our listeners. And you can really also, in this point of the draft, what we're talking about, like Steele said, last few rounds, balance out your team. And when I'm looking at Adam Larsson, I'm looking at a guy on a Seattle team that is very good defensively, number one. Let me start there. They allowed the second least shots against per game last year, 27, Steele. Only the Carolina Hurricanes allowed less. So this is a defensively sound unit. And yeah, am I going after Adam Larsson for the points? No. But 33 last year is a bonus when this man is bringing 173 block shots, 222 hits, 143 shots on net, and steal, almost 50 minutes in penalties. He's a banger league beauty, and I absolutely love him as one of those back end of the draft pieces that balances out your peripheral categories if it's a cat league so nicely.
Very nicely for Adam Larsson. Again, you're not really targeting those points, but again, it is a bonus if he can get over 30 points, which is possible from the great veteran himself. And you're just looking at those blocks. You're looking at the hits. That's his game. Defensive, great in his own zone. So I like this pick a lot. I saw again. I did a draft yesterday. I saw him go pretty early. I was fairly shocked at how early he went. I believe it was the 11th or 12th round, maybe even the 10th, right in the middle of the draft. But for me, again, if you can get him in those later rounds and kind of sneak him down there where you can pick him up, that's where you want to perfectly wait for him.
Yeah, that's not too crazy for me. 10th, 11th is still a little early, but that's not like maybe in the realm of like a terrible selection, because I do think that you and I are also on page with this. The Kraken should be another playoff threat once again this season. But we're going to talk about a few other players on this list. Both you and I have a few more guys. Today's episode is going to be short and sweet, my friends. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook, football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Right now, you can bet on a Super Bowl winner and get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get the bonus bets for every single victory. Bonus bets you can use on spreads, props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your favorite team from all 4 major sports leagues, including the NCAA, your team every single day. And again, if you want to be a part of our Fantasy Hockey Listener League, continue to DM us with your full name and email. We'll add you onto the list. We have over 55 participants so far, only 16 spots available. Scratch that, only 14 spots available, because Flip and I will be in both of those leagues. So again, if you want to be a part of it, continue to DM us. We'll get you added onto the list. The cutoff date is September 20th, and those invites will be sent out right away after the draw, so we can get, all of us can get prepared for that upcoming draft on September 27th and September 28th. And thank you again so much. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, the follow button on your favorite podcast platform, and a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us every single day. I'm also going to show some love to someone that I've talked quite frequently about over the last year. I think he's going to get some great opportunity with the Philadelphia Flyers. It is an Aurora boy himself, Morgan Frost.
Love it.
And look, this is one of those situations where we all know Philadelphia is going to suck. I feel bad for a few of their players, Travis Konechny, Carter Hart being one of them, even
Owen
Morgan
Tippett.
Frost and Owen Tippett. I feel bad because it's a very sticky situation, and everyone knows how I feel about John Tortorella at this point. I've been venting about him, going off on him for the last year and a half, but someone's going to have to step up. And we know Travis Konechny has that offensive ability for him, but it can't just be him. Morgan Frost is now the #1 center in Philadelphia. He had a great season last year, played almost the full year, 81 games. He had 19 goals and 46 assists, 155 shots. He actually had 85 hits as well. I think that number can go up quite a bit as well. Same with the shots category. He's going to get a lot more power play time as well. Only had 4 power play points for the Philadelphia Flyers. He's going to be on the second power play unit, I believe. I think he should be on the first one, to be honest. But I think he's going to get some great opportunity. He's now that #1 centerman, and they need him. They need him to step up and be that guy, even at this young age of 24 years old. So it's a very young team now. They've got some veterans in the bottom 6. They get Cam Atkinson back, but Morgan Frost really needs to step up, and I think he will.
I think he will too, Steele. He also put up triple digits in junior a couple of times. He's got speed. He's got playmaking ability. And I think he's just a really solid two-way player. And I think with Morgan Frost, you're going to see a big step out this year. I don't actually know how late he would be available in certain deeper dynasty league formats. Obviously, in the regular one, you're spot on. He'll be out there in the deep rounds in most leagues. I think I just wanted to put out there in some of those more in-depth dynasty keeper leagues, this kid's going to get snapped up because he is, I think, that good. And kudos to you for highlighting him once again. Good Aurora boy. We do love those Ontario lads. Love it, Steele. And I'm going to talk about a guy in Anthony Beauvillier that after shifting from the pit of offense that is Long Island, he put up 20 points in 33 games and formed really nice chemistry with Peterson and Kuzmenko. Elias Pettersson, and Andrei Kuzmenko proved that they are elite offensive pieces. You and I have been talking a lot about Kuzmenko. I think another year settled in the Vancouver system. Anthony Beauvillier was plagued by a number of things in Long Island, including himself underperforming. 40 points, he scraped around 35 points, 30 points. This is a first-round draft pick, and I know he's back end of the draft, but he has never lived up to the hype. He's only 26 years old, Steele, entering the year as a 26-year-old. He's in his prime. I think you see 50 to 55 points from Beauvillier this year, no problem. And that makes him a back end of the draft player to target to fill out your offensive load. And that's what I've tried to do here. Balance out a little bit of everything to try and show people on YouTube, and listeners, that this is how you really balance out your team as well. Something that, I've been a victim of not doing in the past.
Yeah, it does happen sometimes without balancing. I actually had to deal with that in my draft yesterday where I went forward heavy, and in the later rounds I was scratching for the defensive groups, and I'll get to my defenseman in a little bit. But sticking on the topic of Anthony Beauvillier, you're right. He had wasn't really producing with the New York Islanders. I think they expected a lot more out of him. We understand the Islanders are not an offensive-minded team, but there were a lot of times where he should have been scoring goals. He had great opportunities with open nets or great chances from his teammates setting him up, and he was missing wide. He was missing left, over the net, or just wasn't picking the right spot in the moment. And so that was one of the reasons why they felt comfortable trading. Also, you get Bo Horvat in return. But he goes to Vancouver, and he's playing with a couple of younger guys now. He's playing with Pettersson. He's playing with Kuzmenko, guys around his age, and he's playing great. You were right. I was wrong last year. He really did step up when he did get traded to the Canucks, and that could be one of those sneaky picks in the later rounds. I don't even know if he was actually drafted in my fantasy league last night, but that's maybe a good point. Maybe keep my eyes on him. Put a little star next to his name just in case a guy goes down to injury, especially playing with Pettersson and Kuzmenko on that top line. Even if he falls back with JT Miller and Ilya Mikheyev on the second line, that's a pretty good win as well. They got some great forwards up there in Vancouver in the top six. Do we want to continue with my next player? You know what? Let's do it.
Yeah. Is that your second guy?
That was only my second guy. I've talked about Filip Chytil. I've talked about Morgan Frost. I've got one player left. I know you've got two players.
Yep.
Maybe I'll throw another one in there just for the sake of it.
Okay.
But I want to talk about this defenseman, a guy I drafted last night in round 16, I believe it was.
Jake Walman.
And again, like I said, I went forward heavy all the way up until round 10, pretty much. I was drafting forwards left, right, and center, and I got stuck in a sticky situation for my defensive group. And look who it was, Jake Walman, sitting there at in round 16. And it was very surprising because when we were drafting on ESPN, looking on ESPN, he's actually the 4th ranked player for the Detroit Red Wings, behind Moritz Seider, Dylan Larkin, and Alex DeBrincat right now. He's the 4th ranked Detroit Red Wings. He's actually ranked 104th on ESPN rankings right now. And I got him in the 16th round. And I know why now, after looking at his stats. Let me just pull them up real quick.
Yeah, I got him ready.
Got them ready. But it's a lot of those peripheral stats that you're going to be seeing from a lot of these guys you get in the later rounds.
True.
And Jake Walman, 27 years old, traded from the St. Louis Blues to Detroit Red Wings, played 63 games last year, had 18 points. You're not going to get a ton of points out of him, yet I still believe he could get upwards of 25 points now that he's
Or
paired
more,
up with
yeah.
25 or more now that he's paired up with Moritz
Mhm.
Seider.
I
You're not
like
going to
this
get
deal.
yeah, you're not going to be getting. I don't believe he'll be on power play minutes. You're probably going to get him on the PK. I just want to pull up daily faceoff right now for the Detroit Red Wings just to make sure. But yeah,
Yeah,
he's playing. He's paired up with Moritz Seider for the first D pairing. And yeah, you're not going to get any power play time from Jake
mm,
Walman, but he's on the first penalty kill unit. He gets a lot of blocks. He's going to get a lot
yep,
of hits as well. He's a tough guy. 140 shots, and I can see him
mhm,
put up 170 shots next year as well. He's getting a ton of opportunity. He was playing 19, close to 20 minutes last year for
mm,
the Detroit Red Wings in the 63 games, 45 penalty minutes. So for me, for a guy who, again, went top heavy in the forward group, Jake Walman could just be sitting there right for the taking for a lot of GMs out there. And don't just
mm,
pass up on him just because you don't know who he is. Look at the stats, do your research, watch a little bit of YouTube videos about his
mm,
game and his play style.
yep,
And again, look at some of the projections as well. Again, only had 18 points, but he's projected to have over 30 points, over 170 shots, over 140 hits, and over
mm.
60 hits and 140 blocks, excuse me. But the projections are great as well.
I was actually lucky enough to see Jake Walman play last year in Detroit when I went down to see the Penguins and Sid. And I actually like a lot about this kid's game. And I'm going to say kid. I know he is already 27 years old. Good Toronto boy is finally getting a real good opportunity in the NHL. Also, speaking of GMs, Steve Yzerman knows what he's doing, and he threw a
Yeah.
3-year deal at Walman. So if you're not buying into Steele's take, buy into what Stevie Y's investing in, because this guy is going to be an important piece in Detroit, a team
Yes.
that we expect to be better. Maybe it's not this year they have their real come up, but it's real close, Steele, and it might be this year as well. Just so many teams. We've talked about that in the East and in the Atlantic. Jake Walman, love it. Back into the draft, last couple of
Mhm.
rounds, your last blue liner, you're back in fill in. Love it for sure. Why don't you take us to break, Steele, and I'll hit you with my last two guys when we come back.
This episode is also brought to you by Jace Medical. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace case. The Jace case provides five life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you the peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. And Jace Medical is also very, very simple. You go online, you fill out a form, and then you get a prescription, life-saving medications right to your doorstep. The Jace case gives you peace of mind. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 getting life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical. Plus, an additional $20 off by using code locked on at the checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Promo code locked on for the $20 off. Again, that's code locked on at checkout at jasemedical.com. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We appreciate and love all of our listeners out there. Thank you so much. Continue to hammer that subscribe button, hit the follow button. We are almost at 1,000 subscribers. I believe we're only 10 or 15 subscribers away from 1,000 on YouTube. So let's get that number right up there before the start of the season. That was one of our goals this offseason, was to get to 1,000. And we appreciate everyone that tunes in and listen Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. Also, if you can, please leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate all that love and support. And if you want to be a part of that Fantasy Hockey Listener League, continue to DM us. Again, there will be a draw on September 20th. And the draft date, September 27th and 28th, the following week. We couldn't be more excited about it. And that's why we are talking about these steals, draft steals at the end of your draft. And we've talked about a few good ones already. Filip Chytil, Adam Larsson, Jake Walman, Morgan Frost. I know you got two more in the chamber. I'm actually going to add someone onto my list real quick as well, but I'll throw it back over to you, Flip.
Yeah, please do. And bear with me while the laptop dies here. So let's get that back in before we have some real technical difficulties. And we're back. I literally tried to give a player at every position, D, forward, and goalie, just to give it a little bit of a spread around. And, kudos to you for highlighting a guy on a bad team that I think is a really good goaltender in Karel Vejmelka. Last year,
Yeah.
18, 24,
Love
and
this
6.
guy.
But look a little deeper, Steele. 3 shutouts, a 900 save percentage, and I know a 3.43 and a 900 save percentage, 899 save percentage doesn't jump off the page. Let's remember the team that he played behind of last year. A team, by the way, that is one of those teams that is around the league. Experts, you and I, whoever, is pegging them to be a much better squad this year. So let's remember that, number one. Karel Vejmelka also faced the third most shots against per game last year at over 35 pucks on net per game. And he still had a 900 save percentage and 3 shutouts. So when I'm telling you, this is the kind of guy that if you expect to come up from Arizona, you expect him to be more comfortable and the team ahead of him to be better. Those are 3 real good reasons, Steele, to target also a starting netminder. This guy plays 50 plus games. I think he's going to play 50 plus again this year. That's the kind of guy that if your top 2 pieces, one of them goes down with injury and you can slot in. Yeah, it's not going to be pretty, Steele. We know this. Filling in goalie injuries is never going to be easy and never going to be pretty. But if you set yourself up for success, you've targeted Vejmelka at the back end of the draft, I think it is a really sneaky good move for a player that is sneaky good himself.
You know how I feel about this goaltender. I love Karel Vejmelka. I have him starred already on my watch list just in case my goalies don't pan out the way I hope to. And we know what the Arizona Coyote or past Arizona Coyote goaltenders have done as well. Antti Ranta being one of them now with the Carolina Hurricanes, a perennial backup goaltender who's been great throughout his career. I had his name in my mind right now, but I'm blanking on it.
There was others.
But I'll get back to it. But yeah, there were other Arizona Coyote goalies, and Karel Vejmelka could be one of them, potentially be moved at some point. But for now, he's a stud for the Arizona Coyotes. They bring in a couple of defensemen as well, Matthew Dumba, Sean Durzi, to help out in front of him.
True.
And the offensive group is great as well. They bring in a lot of guys. They've got some young guys coming into the lineup. So I like this team. We both like where this team's heading, and we both really like Karel Vejmelka. And just keep an eye out for him on the draft board as well. I'm going to add one player onto my list before I throw it back over to you if you have that last player there.
Oh, I'm ready.
I'm also going to put Ryan Hartman on this list at the back end of the draft. And that's because only played 59 games last year. He gets injured, but he still had 37 points in 59 games, 150 shots, 48 blocks, and 62 hits. He's still that number 1 centerman for the Minnesota Wild.
He's
playing with Matt Zuccarello. He's playing with Kirill Kaprizov. And again, if he can play, if he's fully healthy, plays 82 games or at least plays over 70 games, there's no question, to me at least, that he can reach 60 points again like he did the year prior to last year. So also real quick, banger league beauty. 90 penalty minutes in 59 games last year, 95 the year before that, and 82. Also had 239 shots the year before that. So if he's healthy and he plays, there's a lot of peripherals that add up playing with Kaprizov.
Yeah, he's fallen back to earth a little bit for sure. He had that breakout a couple of seasons ago, but the main point you brought up already, it's Kaprizov and Zook on that top line. That means he's fantasy relevant. And I think he's also one of those names, Steele, that just isn't a name. And is probably going to get overlooked. And I'm not saying that as a chirp. It's just a fact. And you're probably going to be able to get him in a majority of leagues at the very back end, probably at any time you want. And if you miss out on him, I would flag him as a player on your watch list as well to scoop up right away should you have an injury in the forward group. Because just by default with him playing with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, worth a look for sure. I couldn't come on this show, Steele, and talk about the back end of the draft, late round targets, and not be fully buying into what I think is going to be a good year for Max Domi. I don't think he's getting nearly enough credit for how good he was last year. And I know he sometimes put up these performances on bad teams when it doesn't really matter, perhaps. But the Dallas Stars in the postseason last year wasn't a team that didn't have it going on, and they very much were playing for keeps. He was great down the stretch for them. He was great in the postseason, to the tune of, actually, once he did move to Dallas, 7 points in 20 games. Sure, that doesn't necessarily jump off the page. 13 points in 19 games in the postseason jumps off the page. And I know the Dallas Stars were a good team, but he's going to another one in Toronto. And if he can crack into that top 6, and I know that's a big if because there's a lot going on. Matty Nyes is going to stake a claim up there. There are a lot of good pieces in Toronto that he's going to have to duel, obviously.
Yep.
But if he does crack that top 6, he should definitely be a piece that's drafted, definitely worth the value that I also think a very motivated Max Domi is going to be to go off this year in Toronto. Does it pan out? Does he end up playing third or fourth line minutes because he doesn't start off well? Perhaps. And then you are a little bit rattled that you drafted him, but that's why you target him in the last couple of rounds, and he's your fill-in because he could pay off huge, Steele. That's how I'm looking at that one.
I think he will for sure get an opportunity in the top 6 group, whether it's playing with Nylander and Tavares on the second line or potentially with Matthews and Marner on the first line. Obviously, he's going to be shuffled around quite a bit. Sheldon Keefe does that just to keep the opponents on their toes and get everyone familiar with everyone on the team. I want to ask, I'm going to throw this your way.
Okay.
It's based off of the draft I had last night with both Bertuzzi and Max Domi. How high do you think both Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi were taken in my draft last night?
Well, I assume it's an Ontario-based league, Steele, and everyone's a little excited for Leaf season. I don't know. Maybe Tyler Bertuzzi was taken in the 6th or 7th round. Maybe Domi just after that, if that's what you're getting at.
Tyler Bertuzzi was taken in the 4th round.
Too early.
And Max Domi was taken in the 6th round by the same GM. The same GM has drafted, I believe, 4 or 5. Drafted 4 or 5 Toronto Maple Leaf players. And guess what he also did? He drafted David Pastrnak with the 3rd overall pick. Immediately called one of the other GMs and traded David Pastrnak for Mitch Marner.
Interesting strategy. I hope for Leafs fans' sake that pans out. It's a very bold strategy that I would not recommend employing. But okay. I think all 3 of those moves that you just mentioned are all ill-conceived, but I hope it pans out for that individual.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off here. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday, especially on Mondays where we do another mock draft episode 3.0 edition. But make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time is when you can find all of our episodes. We appreciate all that love and support you show us every single day. So thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again on Monday.
Peace.